Hey there, this is John from Heroes and Legends, and today we're going to do part 3 of our Fate Reforged set review, which focuses on the red cards. Already posted on the channel, you will find parts 1, 2, and 3 where we looked at white, and then blue, and then black. And let's go ahead and get started. First card is Alicia, who smiles at death. She costs 1 red and 2 colorless. She's a legendary creature, 3/2 first strike. Whenever Alicia, who smiles at death, attacks, you may pay 2 black or white mana. If you do, return target creature or card with power 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped and attacking. So this is a limited bomb blowout card, especially late game, and you're playing a lot of small creatures and aggressive strategy. 3/2 first strike means it's going to get around all the morph and manifest creatures that could possibly be clogging up the board at different times of the game. And what's neat about this card too is you can pay the 2 to bring a creature back from your graveyard tapped and attacking. This doesn't make you sacrifice them at the end of turn. Usually these effects will let you use that creature one time and then exile them. This creature sticks around, assuming it doesn't get killed in combat. So, very good card. Could see some standard applications as well. Again, as we go forward in the standard season, if there is a aggro deck out there that's going to use red, this is going to be a card that will be part of that build, I think. Next one's Arcbound, 1 red and 2 colorless for an instant. Choose target creature. Whenever that creature is dealt damage this turn, it deals that much damage to each other creature and each player. So, best case scenario for you, I think the reason this card exists is it's basically a board wipe with some contingency to it. It's not going to be as consistent as a regular Wrath effect, but it is kind of a panic button effect. It's going to help clear the board or wipe the board. The only other benefit I can see to it is if you're running a lot of big creatures, you might be able to use this ability to wipe your opponent's board and not necessarily wipe your creatures out. It's also direct damage to the opponent if you're getting late game. So it's a versatile card, but it is a card that at times might not be helpful, especially if you're in a situation where you have less life than your opponent, or if you just don't have the impact of a big creature coming at you, or you can make this really effective. So interesting card. I don't know if this makes my build in limited just out of the pack. Probably sideboarded in though if I was playing against some more aggressive creature heavy strategies. Next one is Bathe in Dragonfire, and that's one red and 2 colorless. Bathe in Dragonfire deals 4 damage to target creature. It's a sorcery, so you don't have the versatility of an instant, and you don't have the versatility to hit a player with it, but you're still going to play this in limited. It's removal. It doesn't remove everything, but it's going to take out some of the bigger creatures that are out there. Strong limited card. Bloodfire Enforcers, 1 red and 3 colorless for a 5/2. Bloodfire Enforcers has first strike and trample as long as an instant and a sorcery card are in your graveyard. If I'm not playing a lot of instants and sorceries, I'm probably not going to let this guy make the cut into my limited deck. When drafting, if I know I'm drafting a lot of instants and sorceries, I'm going to go ahead and draft this guy, or I may draft him and speculate on some instant and sorceries coming up. Now, he's a great card if you have that. For 4, you get a 5/2 first striker. That's awesome, but it does take a little work to get there, and you want to make sure your deck is able to do that pretty consistently before you make the leap. Other than that, this guy without the first strike ability isn't fantastic. He's going to trade with a morph or manifest creature, but he will clear the path at least by taking out one creature. Break Through the Line, 1 red and 1 colorless for an enchantment. Pay 1 red, target creature with power 2 or less gains haste until end of turn and can't be blocked this turn. This is a great card for aggressive decks, and they really push some of these enchantments this time around. This is a fantastic enchantment, cheap, 2 to put out and then 1 to activate for each creature that you want to activate it on. And this is going to let all your small creatures just power in. Your manifest, your morph creatures are going to be able to just power in and gain haste so you can move fast, but also just get across for damage, ends board stall situations, and with a few combat tricks you can put someone away pretty quick with a card like this. So very good card. I could see, obviously limited, you're going to play it. It's uncommon, so you're going to see some out there. Now, if your deck isn't conducive to the small creature strategy, then yeah, you're not going to play it, but I think in most cases you're going to play it in your red deck. As far as standard goes, yeah, I can definitely see this. Again, if there's that aggressive deck out there, I could see this being a part of it. Collateral damage, 1 red, and it's an instant. As an additional cost to cast collateral damage, sacrifice a creature, and it deals 3 damage to target creature or player. So basically, you got a lightning bolt that forces you to sack a creature to use it. Still a good card. Lightning bolt is, if those of you who played with it know how good that card is. Guess what? Sacrifice a creature, it's still good. So now, are there times where it's going to be stuck in your hand? Yes, and you're in a situation where you're behind. Your last creature's was taken out, and you have these in your hand, and you can't really make use of them, and you don't want to put one creature out and then take your board state back to do the 3 damage in a lot of cases. So there are times you're going to get burned by this card, but you're still going to play it in limited. And I think standard, where you can set your deck up a little better to have more creatures, that aggressive deck in standard is going to go ahead and use this as well. Defiant Ogre, 1 red and 5 colorless, and he's a 3/5. When he enters the battlefield, you can put a +1/+1 counter on him or destroy target artifact. I do like his versatility. He costs 6, but you are getting a 4/6 if you choose to do the +1/+1, and that's not too bad. This is the first one of these +1/+1 counter creatures that we've seen in the set review that I feel like I would feel pretty good playing in my deck. And you get the added versatility of, if there's an artifact that's giving you a hard time, you're going to be able to take that artifact out. Now, again, in cons and Fate Reforged, there's not a lot of great artifacts out there, but it's just still kind of nice to have. Dragon Rage, 1 red and 2 colorless. Add red mana to your mana pool for each attacking creature you control until end of turn. Attacking creatures you control pay red, and this creature gets +1/+0 till end of turn. So your creatures all basically get fire breathing, and you get some additional red mana to pay into that fire breathing. And it is an instant, so it's a combat trick. So again, this is another one of those cards that is championing this small creature aggressive strategy, which really seems to be getting pushed, which is interesting, since that's the opposite of what we saw in the last set cons of Tarkir, which was all about big creatures and getting big creatures down and getting them morphed out as quickly as possible. Again, you're going to play this in limited if you have the small creatures. You're going to possibly see this in standard, even if you have that deck out there. Now, I don't know if I would put this in the deck as opposed to maybe some of the direct damage options in standard. It probably wouldn't make the cut once you're at that point in deck building, but it's an interesting card. It truly is. Fierce Invocation for 1 red and 4 colorless. It's a sorcery. Manifest the top card of your library, then put 2 +1/+1 counters on it. 5's a little pricey, but you're getting a 4/4 creature, which isn't horrible, and you do have the possibility of flipping it into a bigger creature if it turns out to be a creature when you manifest. So I'd play this in limited. Not one of my top cards, maybe. It might be one of my higher 21, 22, 23. Might not make the cut if I have a really good pool, but I would entertain playing it. It's not the worst limited card. Flame Rush Rider, 1 red and 4 colorless. He's a 3/3. Whenever he attacks, put a token onto the battlefield tapped and attacking that's a copy of another target attacking creature. Exile the token at the end of combat, and he also has the dash ability for 2 red and 2 colorless. I'm not crazy about this guy. He's a 3/3. I like the dash effect that lets him get out a little bit earlier and lets you protect him a little bit. But a couple things have to happen here. One, you have to have other creatures to target to make copies of. And secondly, when he runs in, he needs to not run into a creature with toughness or power 3 or greater. So, and you're paying 5 if you're not using the dash ability. I'm not crazy about this guy. Not to say he wouldn't make my limited cut, but he would be potentially, if I have a good pool, potentially would be left out. He's okay in limited, but not a windmill slam and draft, and he's not going to go right into my deck. Flamewake Phoenix, 2 red and 1 colorless, and it's a 2/2 flying haste, and Flamewake Phoenix attacks each turn if able. Also has the Ferocious ability, and this is the first time we're seeing it, but this is the Teamer ability from Khans of Tarkir. It carries over, and basically simply means you get some sort of bonus if you have a creature with power 4 or greater on the battlefield. And this bonus is at the beginning of combat on your turn. If you control a creature with power 4 or greater, you may pay 1 red mana. If you do, return Flamewake Phoenix from your graveyard to the battlefield. And these Phoenix effect type cards are all very strong in aggro or even burn decks. This one is not as good as some we've seen in the past, but it's still good. You're still going to play it in limited. It still could have a home in an aggressive deck in standard. I could definitely see this getting some standard play. It's fast, it's reusable, a reusable resource. It has evasion, so it's a very good card. Friendly Fire. 1 red and 3 colorless. For this instant, target creature's controller reveals a card at random from his or her hand. Friendly Fire deals damage to that creature and that player equal to the revealed card's converted mana cost. This one's a trap. Steer clear of this one. It's just too easy to blank. You're paying 4 mana and you could get nothing out of it. If your opponent doesn't have any cards in their hand, or you end up choosing a land card, especially if they know once they see this thing once, they're going to hang on to some lands in their hand probably. So yeah, just steer clear. Goblin Heel Cutter, 1 red and 3 colorless. Whenever Goblin Heel Cutter attacks, target creature can't block this turn. He's a 3/2, and he also has dash for 1 red and 2 blue. So I like the fact that he has dash. You can get him out pretty quick. You can prevent a creature from blocking, which makes the dash more likely to get through and be able to reuse him again and again. Pretty good card. Definitely going to use him in my limited decks. Gores Wine, 1 red and 2 colorless. He's a 4/1. You gotta look at it this way. He's basically gonna trade probably with a Morpher Manifest creature. Not a great card. Probably not making my cut in most limited decks unless I'm really, really scrambling to find creatures. Humble Defector, 1 red and 1 colorless. 2/1. Tap to draw 2 cards. Target opponent gains control of Humble Defector. Activate this ability only during your turn. So, interesting card. Yeah, I guess the question is, can you get more value out of it than your opponent can? And if your timing is right, yes. So I would think about playing him in my limited decks. I don't know if there's any constructed competitive formats that are going to want something like this. You got to think that maybe there's some way in like a stronger format, like a Legacy, to break a card like this, where somehow you combine it with either board sweep ability or some other ability where you can take the creature back and now let your opponent get the drawing 2 cards, because the draw 2 cards is very powerful. So there's probably some tricks out there that can make it better in some of the Eternal formats. Don't see it really being played in standard. I would play around with it a little bit in limited. Commander is where a card like this I think would be the most fun, because now not only are you drawing 2 cards, but you're also sort of forming an alliance maybe and giving someone else an opportunity to get some extra cards, and that could be passed around the table. So I see it really as a really fun Commander card. I don't know if it's going to turn out to be much more than that. Hungering Yeti, 1 red and 4 colorless. As long as you control a green or blue permanent, you may cast Hungering Yeti as though it had flash, and he's a 4/4. So if I'm paying 5 for a 4/4, even if I don't have one of the other 2 colors, that's not bad. I'm definitely going to do that in limited and be okay with it. And if I have one of the other 2 colors in play, well, even better. I can use him as a combat trick potentially and flash him in. Lightning Shrieker, 1 red and 4 colorless. He's a 5/5, and he is a dragon. Flying, trample, haste. At the beginning of the end step, Lightning Shrieker's owner shuffles it into his or her library. And great card in limited. I really do like this. You do get this evasion. You get in there for 5 damage in most cases, and you have trample. So maybe you're taking out a smaller flyer and getting in for a little damage. And when at the end of the turn, he doesn't just go to the graveyard. He actually gets shuffled back into your library for the potential of drawing him again. Draft, he's a common, so I wouldn't mind drafting a couple of these guys for a red deck. I think it's a pretty cool card. Now you're giving up a little board presence when you play a card like this. You're paying the 5 for the damage. It almost feels you're basically playing Lightning Axe. Pretty cool limited card, I think. Mardu Runemark, 1 red and 2 colorless. Steer clear of this one. It's another kind of card sync trap. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2. It has first strike if you control a white or black permanent. You're losing card advantage. You're putting this on a creature, maybe or maybe not getting the first strike ability, and then if a creature is destroyed, you're basically losing a card. So don't play it. Maru Scout, 2 red. It's a 3/1 with dash for 1 red and 1 colorless. And I like this a lot. I like the dash ability on a card like this. It gives you a little more protection. And this is a good example of the small, aggressive creatures that you want for these to complement a lot of these spells that bolster them. Mob Rule, 2 red and 4 colorless, and this is sorcery. You get to choose one of the following. Gain control of all creatures with power 4 or greater until end of turn. Untap those creatures that gain haste till end of turn, or you're getting a chance to gain control of all creatures with power 3 or less till end of turn. Untap those creatures that gain haste. So basically a really big act of treason. And I do like active treason effects a lot. I think they can swing a game. They can sometimes sneak a victory in for you, especially if you're taking creatures and using them against your opponent, adding them to your army that's already there. If you have sacrifice effects where you can go ahead and sacrifice some of your opponent's creatures before giving them back, that's awesome. So I really like this card. I mean, 6 is a little pricey, but this could be a game ender under a lot of circumstances in limited. Outpost Siege, 1 red and 3 colorless for an enchantment. And when it comes to the battlefield, choose Khans or Dragons. If you choose Khans at the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library. Until end of turn, you may play that card. And if you pick Dragons, whenever a creature you control leaves the battlefield, Outpost Siege deals 1 damage to target creature or player. The Khan's ability is a beating, and I'm sure there's at some point that the Dragon's ability is something you're going to want to do, especially if maybe you're close to winning the game and you have a sack outlet to get rid of some creatures and do direct damage. But I think 9 times out of 10 or more, you're going to be using the Khan's ability, and this is the same ability that I believe one of the latest Chandras had, and it's a great ability. It's basically drawing an extra card a turn. If this goes unchecked, you're going to win the game. This just beats down your opponent with card advantage. It's fantastic, fantastic card. And cheap for 4. Pyro Technics, 1 red and 4 colorless. This is a relatively old reprint. Pyro Technics deals 4 damage divided as you choose among any number of target creatures and or players. This is fantastic direct damage. You're going to take out a lot of small creatures. Any leftover points you can put on your opponent, or you can take out a 4/4 creature. Very strong. You're going to play this every time in limited, and definitely has some prospects in standard as well. Rage Form, 2 red and 2 colorless, and it's an enchantment. Whenever it enters the battlefield, it becomes an aura with enchant creature. Manifest the top card of your library and attach Rage Form to it. Enchant creature has double strike. Don't like this one quite as much as some of the others we saw. I really liked the white and blue ones of these that we saw in the previous set reviews. This one costs a little more, and I get it. It's costing a little more because double strike can be a little more volatile of an ability. But you're paying 4 for this one. 2 of it's on color. You're getting a 2/2 double striker. Feels like it might take out a creature, but not do a whole lot more than that. Now, if it happens to be manifested on a huge creature and you can flip it, well, that's awesome. And if there's a way to set your deck up for that's fantastic. It makes the card tenfold better. But I think under normal circumstances, if you don't have any sort of like scry or deck manipulation, I don't know if I would take a spot with this particular card in limited. Shaman of the Great Hunt, 1 red and 3 colorless, and he's a 4/2 with haste. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, put a +1/+1 counter on it, and he has a ferocious ability where you can pay 2 as well as 2 green or blue and draw a card for each creature you control with power 4 or greater. So late game, if you have those colors, that's an awesome ability because it's going to let you start gaining that card advantage and hopefully get over that hump and get over that board stall. The fact that he comes in with haste and he's a 4 and a 4/2, I like him, and this is a mythic, so it is pushed as a good card. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, put the +1/+1 counter on it. That's not irrelevant either, because if he gets in, now he's a 5/3. It's a pretty strong card. You're going to use it in limited. This could potentially see some play in standard as well. Shockmaw Dragon, 2 red and 4 colorless. It's a 4/4 flyer, and whenever Shockmaw Dragon deals combat damage to a player, it deals 1 damage to each creature that player controls. So this is a good card, much like the other uncommon dragons in the cycle. It's a 4/4 flyer. You're going to play it every single time in limited. Not as powerful as some of the rare dragons that we'll see later in the set. Very, very good. Smouldering Defeat, 1 red and 1 colorless for a 2/2, and whenever he dies, it deals 2 damage to you. I like this card. This is again another one of those small, cheap creatures that you want to get out to power some of these other strategies that help make them better. And this is another way to enable that aggressive small creature deck. Teamer Battle Rage, 1 red and 1 colorless, and again another way to enable that deck. It's an instant. Target creature gains double strike until end of turn, and it has a ferocious trigger that creatures also gain trample until end of turn if you control a creature with power 4 or greater. And the big thing to note here is this is an instant, so this is a huge combat trick. This can be a big game if it's played at the right time and you have a big creature that either is trample or maybe given trample with the other ability, or it goes unblocked. So this is the type of thing that can swing games. This is the type of thing that can end games, and it's a common. So you're going to see a lot of these floating around. They're going to be abundant in draft, and I think they're going to be highly drafted, and they're going to be showing up in season. I don't know if the standard deck will need it as much if it's well designed to the point where you're going to have creatures and other instants and sorceries to kind of back them up, such as burn. However, it could, if there's a need for it, I could see it in that type of deck. Vault Breaker, 1 red and 3 colorless. It's a 4/2. Whenever Vault Breaker attacks, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. And he also has dash for 1 red and 2 colorless. So you can get him to dash out for 3, and he's a 4/2, which is pretty good. And when he attacks, you have the option to rummage for a card, which is also a pretty good value. I think this one will be a good limited card. Last card in red is Wild Slash. 1 red, it's an instant, and it deals 2 damage to target creature or player, but it has Ferocious. If you control a creature with power 4 or greater, damage can't be prevented this turn. So that damage can be prevented is kind of nice. I think you're going to see that make its way into standard. It's an instant, it does 2, and it's going to be a good removal spell for you in limited as well. So having said that, that concludes the red review for Fate Reforged. We're going to get the green up very soon and then wrap it up with the rest of the cards. So thank you for watching and have a great day.